My future daughter-in-law leaned close during their own wedding and whispered, "Buy us a house, or I'll tell everyone you got me pregnant." 20 minutes later, she'd be screaming in front of 200 guests. The ceremony? Canceled. My son? Destroyed. But before I tell you how I buried her with 5 words and a smartphone, you need to understand how a dental hygienist from Folly Beach almost stole everything I'd built in 37 years. Because 2 years earlier, I actually liked her. I'm Vincent Harding. I run Harding Construction out of Charleston, South Carolina. Been widowed for 5 years. My wife Catherine died of ovarian cancer when our son Ethan was 26. Her last words to me weren't, "I love you." They were, "Promise me he'll find someone good." I promised. Ever make a promise you'd give anything to take back? 4th of July, 2023. Folly Beach. Ethan dragged me to some cookout his college buddy was throwing. Hot dogs burning on a grill, kids screaming in the surf, fireworks waiting for sunset. Then I saw her, talking to my son by the cooler. Blonde ponytail, sundress covered in daisies, laughing at something Ethan said like he'd just discovered comedy. "Dad, this is Brianna Cole," Ethan said, grinning like an idiot. "She works at Dr. Morrison's dental office downtown." She shook my hand. Firm grip. Eye contact. "Mr. Harding, Ethan talks about you constantly. The way you rebuilt after losing Catherine, that takes real strength." My chest tightened. Not because she said something wrong, because she said something perfect. Over the next hour, I watched her. How she volunteered at the animal shelter, how she'd grown up in Myrtle Beach with a single mom, how she loved old movies and homemade pasta. Every answer felt rehearsed, but Ethan was drowning in her. And I'd promised Catherine I wouldn't be the suspicious father who drove away the good ones. So I smiled, laughed at her stories, welcomed her into our lives, and spent the next year feeling like I was watching my son walk toward a cliff in the dark. The proposal came exactly 12 months later. Same beach, same sunset. Ethan used Catherine's engagement ring, the one I'd saved in a safe deposit box for 15 years. White gold, 3 small diamonds, nothing flashy, but it meant everything. Brianna cried, said yes, posted 17 photos within the hour. That ring wasn't just jewelry. It was the last physical piece of my wife's promise, and I just handed it to someone I didn't trust. 3 months before the wedding, Brianna started making changes. Small ones first, different flowers for the centerpieces, upgraded linens, a better photographer. Then bigger ones. "Vincent," she said over dinner at our house, dabbing her eyes, "I know this is expensive, but my mom can't afford to help. She's struggling, and this is my one day, you know?" Ethan jumped in immediately. "Dad, Mom would want Brianna to have something beautiful." There it was again. Catherine's ghost, used as leverage. The flowers went from $3,000 to $12,000. The cake from $800 to $4,000. The guest list from 80 people to 200 strangers I'd never met. I liquidated part of my retirement account, pulled money from the business, wrote check after check, while that feeling in my chest grew teeth. We've all ignored red flags, right? Told ourselves we're overreacting. I did that for months. 6 weeks before the wedding, I stopped by Ethan's apartment in West Ashley, brought some old photo albums for the reception slideshow, used my key, called out his name. No answer. Then I heard Brianna's voice from the bedroom. Door cracked open. She was on the phone. I should have left. Instead, I froze in the hallway and listened to the woman my son loved describe exactly how she planned to rob us blind. "I told you, baby, once we're married, I'll have access to everything." My blood went cold. The old man's loaded. Construction business, 3 rental properties, investment accounts. Ethan is the only heir, which makes me the only heir once I'm his wife. She laughed. actually laughed. I know it's a long game, but Ethan is pathetically easy to manipulate, and Vincent would rather die than disappoint his dead wife's memory. Honestly, it's almost boring how simple this is. I stood in that hallway holding photo albums of my son's childhood, while his fiancée described him like a mark in a con. My hands were shaking so hard the albums rattled. I left without making a sound, drove home, sat on my driveway for an hour. What could I tell Ethan? That I'd overheard half a phone conversation? That I had a feeling? What would you do with no proof and 6 weeks until your son married a predator? That night, I stared at Catherine's photo on my nightstand. I promised I'd protect him, even from himself. Then I made a phone call that would either save Ethan's life or destroy what was left of our relationship. The man who answered was Garrett Pierce, former Marine, current private investigator out of Columbia, South Carolina, and the only person I trusted with something this dangerous. He called me back in 9 days. What he found made that overheard phone call look like amateur hour, because Brianna Cole wasn't just a con artist. She was something much worse. And if you think you'd spot someone like her, subscribe now, because the warning signs I missed could save someone you love. Not subscribing yet? Comment why. I want to know what's holding you back. Garrett Pierce doesn't scare easily. We served together in Helmand Province, watched him stay calm while mortars rained down, saw him negotiate with tribal leaders who'd been fighting since before we were born. But when he called me back about Brianna Cole, his voice had an edge I hadn't heard in 20 years. Then, he said, "How much do you know about identity fraud?" I ran her name through every database I could access, Garrett continued. Legal, financial, criminal, even had a guy check international records. I was pacing my office, door locked, phone pressed so hard to my ear it hurt. Brianna Cole exists, he said. Problem is, she's existed in 4 different states over the last 7 years. Always the same pattern. What pattern? Wealthy guy, engagement, big wedding plans. Then either a sudden breakup with a settlement, or... He paused. Or what? Or the guy dies and she inherits everything. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of my desk, felt my breakfast rising in my throat. Say that again. 2 of her previous fiancés are dead, Vin. One was a car accident in Tennessee. The other was a fall down his basement stairs in Virginia. Both ruled accidental, both left her substantial money. My son wasn't just being conned. He might be marked for death. There's more, Garrett said, and I heard papers shuffling. Her real name isn't Brianna Cole. It's Brianna Louise Patterson. Sealed juvenile record in Georgia, theft and forgery charges. As an adult, 4 previous engagements. 4. She was engaged to a software developer in Austin. He broke it off after she got caught stealing from his business account. Then a real estate agent in Charlotte. He filed a restraining order. Then... Jesus Christ. Then a venture capitalist in Virginia. That's the one who fell down the stairs. And the Tennessee guy? Pharmaceutical sales. Crashed his car 3 weeks before their wedding. Brianna was supposed to be in the passenger seat, but said she felt sick that morning. Lucky her. Lucky. But here's the nuclear option, Garrett said, and I heard papers shuffling. She's currently married to a guy named Trevor Schaefer in Atlanta. Courthouse ceremony 3 years ago. Never divorced, which means her marriage to Ethan would be void. And fraud. Criminal fraud. Part of me felt relieved. We had proof. Legal, undeniable proof that could stop this. The other part of me was calculating how this would destroy my son. Garrett kept talking, sending files, explaining legal options. I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about Ethan's face when he proposed, how happy he'd been, how he'd said, "Dad, I finally found someone Mom would approve of." How was I supposed to tell him that the woman wearing his mother's ring was a con artist who'd potentially killed 2 men?
Have you ever held information that would save someone but destroy them at the same time? Send me everything, I told Garrett. Every document, every photo, every testimony from her previous victims. What are you going to do? I looked at Catherine's photo again, at the calendar showing 6 weeks until the wedding. I'm going to protect my son, the way I should have from the beginning. The files arrived the next morning. FedEx. 3 manila folders that weighed maybe 2 pounds, but felt like carrying concrete. I spent 4 hours reading them in my locked office. Police reports from the restraining orders, bank statements showing money transfers, testimonies from men who'd lost savings, businesses, nearly their sanity, and photos. Brianna with different hair colors, different styles, always the same smile. The smile she'd given Ethan at that 4th of July cookout. That afternoon, I had a meeting with the wedding planner at Magnolia Plantation. Brianna insisted on coming. We walked the gardens where Catherine and I used to visit, where we'd scattered her ashes by the old oak tree, where Brianna was planning to con my family while standing on my wife's grave. The venue was stunning. White columns, flowering dogwoods, Spanish moss hanging like lace. Brianna pointed at the fountain. I want white doves released right here during the vows. That'll be an additional $3,500, the planner said. Brianna looked at me, smiled. Vincent won't mind. Right, Vincent? Every cell in my body wanted to expose her right there. Instead, I smiled back. Whatever makes you happy, I said. Because I'd decided something that morning while reading those files. I wasn't going to tell Ethan privately. That was the merciful option, the fatherly option. But mercy hadn't saved those 2 dead men. I was going to let Brianna think she'd won right up until the moment I destroyed her in front of everyone who mattered. Some of you are thinking I should have warned Ethan immediately. Others think I waited too long already. Drop a comment. What would you have done? The next 6 weeks were psychological warfare. I attended cake tastings while imagining Brianna at those other men's funerals. I wrote checks for flower arrangements while reading police reports about accidental deaths. I smiled at family dinners while Brianna talked about her future with Ethan, a future I knew she'd planned to be very, very short. Every handshake with her felt like touching ice. Every laugh from Ethan felt like a countdown timer. Every night I stared at Catherine's photo and wondered if I was making the right choice. The rehearsal dinner was at Hank's Seafood on Haines Street. 40 people, open bar. Brianna's mother flew in from Myrtle Beach, a woman who was supposedly struggling financially, but showed up in designer clothes and fresh Botox. Brianna gave a speech, thanking me for being the father she never had. The room applauded. I raised my glass, and I felt the folder from Garrett burning like acid in my jacket pocket. Wedding day. June 14th. 90 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. Magnolia Plantation looked like something from a magazine. 200 white chairs arranged in perfect rows, string quartet tuning instruments, white roses everywhere, $12,000 worth of white roses. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie. Catherine, if you can hear me, I hope I'm doing this right. Ethan was getting ready at the venue's groom suite. Brianna was in the bridal suite with her mother and bridesmaids. Garrett had texted me that morning, "Everything good to go?" "Yes," I'd replied. The folder was in my jacket, every document organized, every piece of evidence ready. My plan was simple. Wait until the cocktail hour, pull Ethan aside, show him everything, and let him make the call. Private, dignified, minimal damage. But at 3:47 p.m., 20 minutes before the ceremony, Brianna approached me near the garden fountain. She looped her arm through mine, smiled that perfect smile. "Vincent," she said sweetly, "can we talk privately for just one moment?" And in that moment, I knew my careful plan was about to burn, because the look in her eyes wasn't love or gratitude. It was hunger. And whatever she was about to say would force me to make a choice I'd never prepared for. What she whispered in my ear behind that magnolia tree was so twisted, so calculated that even after everything Garrett had uncovered, I still wasn't ready. The next chapter reveals exactly how far a predator will go when they think they've already won. Subscribe so you never miss the warning signs I did.
We walked away from the cocktail hour, away from the guests, laughing and sipping champagne, away from Ethan, who waved at us from across the lawn, completely oblivious. Behind the old magnolia tree, the same one Catherine and I had our engagement photos taken under, Brianna's mask dropped like someone had flipped a switch. "Here's how this works," she said, voice flat and businesslike. "After today, you're buying us a house." I stared at her. "Excuse me? Historic district, minimum 4 bedrooms. I'm thinking around $600,000. Deed in my name only." "You're insane," she smiled. "Am I? Because here's your alternative, Vincent." She stepped closer. I could smell her perfume, something expensive I'd probably paid for. "I'll tell everyone at this wedding that I'm pregnant. So, with your child." The world tilted. "I'll say you've been forcing yourself on me for months. Every time Ethan was at work, every time I was alone at your house. I'll cry, I'll shake, I'll show them text messages I've already created on a burner phone. Texts where you're begging me to keep quiet." My throat closed. "You wouldn't." "I've done it before, Vincent. 3 times, actually. It works beautifully." She examined her manicure. Grieving widower, lonely. Inappropriate feelings for his son's young fiancé. The story writes itself. And the house is just the beginning, Vincent. There'll be cars, vacations, maybe a beach condo in Hilton Head. You're going to fund my lifestyle for as long as I want. Or what? Or I destroy you. Your reputation, your business, your relationship with Ethan. By the time I'm done, you'll lose everything, and your son will hate you for the rest of your life. She patted my cheek. "So, do we have a deal?" For 5 seconds, I didn't breathe, didn't move, just stood there while this woman, this monster wearing my wife's ring, smiled at me like she'd already won. "What would you do? Give in and protect your reputation, or fight back and risk everything?" I smiled. "You're good," I said calmly. "Really, really good. I almost believe you could pull it off." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Almost. I reached into my jacket pocket. Not for the folder from Garrett, though that was there too. Nope. I pulled out something much simpler. My phone. Screen facing her. Voice recording app still running. Red button glowing. Timestamp 14 minutes, 37 seconds. The color drained from her face like someone had opened a valve. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. "That's everything," I said quietly. Every word. Crystal clear audio. Already backed up to 3 separate cloud services. "You see, Brianna, or should I call you Brianna Louise Patterson, I spent the last 6 weeks learning everything about you." Her eyes went wide. "Your real name, your sealed juvenile record, your 4 previous engagements, and the 2 men who were conveniently dead." I pulled out the folder. "Trevor sends his regards, by the way. Your actual husband, he was very interested to learn you've been planning to commit bigamy." She grabbed for the folder. I stepped back. "This contains police reports, bank statements, testimonies from your previous victims, and copies of your marriage certificate. Everything I need to have you arrested for fraud, blackmail, and conspiracy. So, here's how this actually works. You're going to walk to the front of this venue. You're going to tell every single person here that this wedding is canceled. You'll tell them you're already married, that you've been lying to Ethan from the start, that this was all a con. Or
I play this recording for everyone right now. Then I call the police, then I hand them this folder. You'll go to prison, Brianna. Real prison. And based on what happened to those 2 dead men, they'll be reopening those investigations too. I'm giving you one chance to walk away with some dignity. That's more than you deserve, but I'm not doing it for you. I looked toward the venue, where Ethan was probably checking his watch, wondering where we were. I'm doing it for my son. Because watching you confess is better than watching cops drag you away in handcuffs. Think this was the right call? Or should I have just called the cops? Comment your answer. I want to know if I went too soft. For 10 seconds, Brianna just stared at me. I could see her calculating, weighing options, looking for an angle. There wasn't one. Her shoulders dropped. Something behind her eyes broke, like watching a puppet's strings get cut. You bastard. Yeah, but I'm the bastard who just saved my son's life. We walked back to the venue together. Her in her $10,000 dress that I'd paid for. Me with my phone in one hand and Garrett's folder in the other. I could hear the string quartet warming up, smell the roses, see guests taking their seats, laughing and chatting, completely unaware that everything was about to explode. Ethan stood at the altar in his tuxedo, saw us approaching, smiled. That smile nearly broke me. Brianna stopped at the entrance to the aisle. 200 people were watching now, waiting for the bride's entrance. She looked at me one last time, her face pale, hands shaking. Then she turned to face the crowd. Everyone, the wedding is canceled. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. I can't marry Ethan because I'm already married to someone else. I've been lying to him, to all of you. This whole thing, it was all a lie. Her mother Sandra screamed. Ethan's best man shouted something. Guests erupted, some standing, some gasping, some already pulling out phones.
But I only saw Ethan, standing at that altar, surrounded by white roses and fairy lights, wearing the suit we'd picked out together. His face went through 5 expressions in 3 seconds. Confusion, denial, hope that this was some kind of joke, realization, then pain so raw it was physical. He looked at Brianna, then at me. "Dad!" His voice broke. "What's happening?" Brianna didn't answer him. She turned and ran, that $10,000 dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender, her mother and some guests chasing after her. The string quartet stopped playing mid-note. The perfect venue, the perfect weather, the perfect decorations, all of it surrounding the worst moment of my son's life. I walked down that aisle, not to give away a bride, to catch my son as he fell. He looked at me with those same eyes he'd had as a kid when he'd fallen off his bike, when Catherine died, when the world hurt too much to understand. "I'm so sorry," I said, and I held him while 200 people watched. The venue cleared fast, some guests angry, some confused, some already posting on social media. Garrett showed up 20 minutes later with 2 police officers. I handed them the folder and the recording. They went after Brianna. She was arrested that night trying to board a flight to Mexico. Trevor Schaefer filed for divorce and cooperated with the investigation. The families of those 2 dead men, they demanded the cases be reopened. But none of that mattered to Ethan. For 3 weeks after the wedding, he barely spoke, moved back into my house, slept in his old room, stared at walls. I'd saved him from a predator, but I'd also destroyed every dream he'd built around her. Is saving someone worth breaking their heart, even if it's for their own good? Slowly, things improved. We started working together at the construction company, taking projects out in Mount Pleasant,
building things with our hands the way we used to when he was young. One morning, about 6 weeks after the non-wedding, he walked into my office. "Dad," I looked up. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing what I couldn't." And for the first time since Catherine died, I saw my son starting to heal. But the story doesn't end there, because 3 months later, I got a call from Garrett. "Then," he said, voice tight, "we have a problem." "What now?" "Brianna's lawyer is claiming you fabricated evidence. They're saying the recording was edited, and they have a witness who says you threatened her first." My blood went cold. "Who's the witness?" Silence. Then, "Ethan. What happens when the son you save turns against you?" Subscribe now. You won't believe where this goes. If someone you trusted betrayed you after you saved them, how would you react? Comment below.
Say that again. Garrett's voice came through my phone speaker flat and serious. Brianna's defense attorney filed a motion claiming you coerced her confession. They have a signed affidavit from Ethan stating you've been, quote, acting erratically and obsessively since Catherine died. I was sitting in my truck outside a job site in Somerville. My hands went numb. Ever had someone you'd die for stab you in the back? That's impossible. Ethan thanked me 6 weeks ago. We've been working together every day. He knows what she was. "I'm telling you what I'm seeing," Garrett said. "The affidavit is notarized, dated 3 days ago. Ethan's signature is verified. My son was helping the woman who'd tried to destroy our family." Nothing made sense. I replayed the last few weeks in my head. Ethan had been quieter lately, distracted, taking longer lunch breaks, coming home late. I'd thought he was still processing everything. What if he'd been meeting with Brianna's lawyer? "When's the court date?" I asked. 2 weeks. "But Vin, there's something else." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Brianna's claiming she's pregnant." The world stopped. "She's sticking with her original plan," Garrett continued, saying you pressured her into a relationship, that the baby is yours, that the recording is you threatening to ruin her if she didn't recant. "She's lying. The recording proves..." "Audio can be edited or taken out of context. That's what her lawyer is arguing. And with Ethan backing her story..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "I need to talk to Ethan," I said. "Don't. Not yet." "Why?" "Because I'm having him followed," Garrett paused, "and I need you to see where he's been going." 2 hours later, Garrett sent me photos. Ethan's truck parked outside a coffee shop in downtown Charleston. Timestamp 9:47 a.m. Ethan sitting across from someone at an outdoor table. That someone was Brianna's mother, Sandra. Next photo, Sandra sliding an envelope across the table. Next photo, Ethan opening it, pulling out what looked like documents. Next photo, Ethan signing something. I called Ethan. "Hey, Dad," he answered, sounding normal. Too normal. "What's up?" "Come by the Magnolia Gardens, the old oak tree, 1 hour." "Why there?" "Because that's where your mother's ashes are, and we're going to have a conversation she'd want to be present for." Silence. "Okay," he finally said. I got there first. Same spot where Catherine and I had scattered her ashes 5 years ago. Same bench we'd sat on during our first date. Same tree Brianna had threatened me under 3 months ago. Spanish moss hung like curtains. Late afternoon sun filtered through the branches. Tourists wandered the grounds, laughing and taking photos. And I waited for my son to explain why he'd betrayed me. He walked up looking defensive, arms crossed, jaw tight. Not the broken kid I'd held after the canceled wedding. Not the grateful son who'd thanked me 6 weeks ago. "You had me followed." Not a question. "You signed an affidavit helping the woman who tried to destroy you." I kept my voice level. "Why?" He looked away, toward the gardens, anywhere but at me. "Because maybe you did go too far." The words hit like a punch. "Explain that." "She's pregnant, Dad. Actually pregnant. I saw the medical records. Those can be faked. She's done this. But what if they're not?
His voice cracked. What if there's a baby? What if I destroyed an innocent person's life because you convinced me she was some kind of monster? I felt my chest tighten. This was how she was getting to him, not through lies about me, through guilt, through the possibility of a child. What did Sandra give you at that coffee shop? He hesitated, then pulled folded papers from his jacket. Medical records, ultrasound photos, DNA test results. They offered to prove the baby isn't yours, Ethan said quietly. They're willing to do a paternity test to put this whole thing to rest. And in exchange? In exchange, I tell the court you've been unstable since Mom died, that you became obsessed with Brianna, that you manufactured evidence to break us up. Would you take that deal? Clear your name about the pregnancy, but admit you went crazy? I stood up, walked to the tree trunk, pressed my hand against the rough bark. Ethan, do you remember what your mother said about liars? He didn't answer. She said the best liars always mix truth with fiction, makes the lie harder to spot. Brianna probably is pregnant, that part's true. But whose baby is it? Trevor's? Some other Mark's? And why would she suddenly be willing to prove it's not mine unless she's using that test to manipulate you? Because here's what I think is happening, I continued. She knows the recording is real. She knows the evidence is solid, so she's changing tactics. I turned to face him. She's not trying to prove I'm guilty anymore. She's trying to prove I'm crazy, and she's using you to do it. He stopped. That's paranoid, Dad. Is it? Or is it exactly what a woman with 4 dead or broken fiancés would do? I pulled out my own phone, showed him an email from Garrett. This came through this morning, before you called, before I knew about the affidavit. That DNA test Sandra showed you? It's scheduled for next week, but Brianna's lawyer already filed paperwork stating the results will exclude me as the father. His face went pale. They filed the results before the test was even done. She knew she'd pass it, I said softly, because she knows it's not my baby, never was. The whole thing was a threat, a bluff, and now she's using that bluff to make me look like a paranoid father who destroyed my son's happiness. He sat down hard on the bench, put his head in his hands. I don't know what's real anymore. I know. I sat next to him, the way I used to when he was little and the world felt too big. She's good, Ethan. Maybe the best I've ever seen. She knew exactly how to get to you, through guilt, through the idea that maybe, just maybe, you'd made a mistake. But I haven't told you everything. He looked up. Those 2 men who died, Garrett got the autopsy reports yesterday. Toxicology came back on both. Know what they found? Silence. Oleander poisoning, slow acting, mimics heart attack symptoms and falls. Hard to detect unless you're looking for it. And guess who volunteered at the Charleston Botanical Gardens for 3 months before she met you, where oleander grows in abundance? Ethan's hand started shaking. Garrett's working with the Tennessee and Virginia police now. They're exhuming bodies, running new tests. And if I'm right, if we're all right, Brianna Louise Patterson isn't just a con artist. She's a serial killer, and you were supposed to be victim number 3. His face go gray. I thought he might throw up. That's why she's fighting so hard, I continued. Not because she loves you, but because if this case goes to trial, those other investigations will accelerate. She'll go to prison for life.
So, here's what I need to know, son. Are you really willing to help her walk free? Or were you just scared and confused? For 30 seconds, he said nothing. Just stared at his hands. At the envelope from Sandra. At the tree where his mother's ashes rested. Finally, what do you need me to do? That affidavit, did you actually sign it? Not yet. Sandra said I had until tomorrow. Good, because we're going to use it. His eyes widened. How? By letting Brianna think she's winning, right up until the moment we prove she's been murdering people. My phone buzzed. Garrett texting. I'm outside the gardens. Got something you need to see. We met him in the parking lot. He was holding a tablet. This just came through from the Virginia detective, he said.
turning the screen toward us. Security footage from a hardware store, dated 3 weeks before the Virginia victim died. Brianna buying rat poison, the kind that contains oleander derivatives. They're issuing a warrant, Garrett said. Murder charges, both cases. That's great, Ethan said. So it's over, right? Not quite, Garrett said grimly. Because Brianna's lawyer filed an emergency motion this morning. For what? Bail. They're arguing she's pregnant and needs to be out of jail for prenatal care. The hearing is tomorrow. My blood ran cold. If she makes bail, she'll run, Garrett finished, and we'll never find her. Which means we have less than 24 hours to make sure that doesn't happen. We spent the next hour in Garrett's office, calling the Virginia and Tennessee detectives, coordinating with the Charleston prosecutor, building an airtight case against bail. Ethan, I said, you're going to call Sandra back. Tell her you're signing the affidavit tomorrow morning. Set up a meeting. Why? Because we need her on record confirming details about Brianna's past, and she'll only talk freely if she thinks you're on their side. Think you know how this ends? The final chapter reveals a twist nobody saw coming, including me. Subscribe now or you'll miss the moment everything explodes. I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about those autopsy reports, about men who'd trusted Brianna, who'd given her rings and promises and their lives, about how close Ethan had come to being number 3. I went to my safe, pulled out Catherine's engagement ring, the one that Brianna had worn for 12 months. It had been returned after the arrest, evidence no longer needed. I held it under the light, looked for any trace of the woman who'd worn it, any stain or shadow. I kept my promise. I protected him. Ethan met Sandra at the same coffee shop, 9 a.m. Garrett and I watched from across the street in an unmarked car, audio equipment recording every word. You're doing the right thing, Sandra said, sliding the affidavit across the table. Vincent needs help, professional help. Ethan picked up the pen. Just one question first, he said. Did Brianna ever mention someone named Trevor Schaefer? Sandra's face twitched, just for a second. Who? Her husband, the one she's legally married to, the one that makes her attempted marriage to me bigamy. Sandra stood up. I don't know what you're... Or about the oleander, the poison she used on at least 2 men before me. Ethan continued, voice steady. Sandra went pale. You knew, Ethan said quietly. You helped her. I didn't know about any murders, Sandra stammered. She's my daughter. She needed help with money and You helped her target wealthy men. You played the struggling single mother to make them feel guilty. You were part of the con. Sandra looked around wildly, saw the car across the street, the equipment visible through the window. You're recording this. Every word, Ethan confirmed. 2 police officers appeared from inside the coffee shop. Sandra Whitlock, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud. She screamed, tried to run. They cuffed her in the parking lot while tourists filmed on their phones. Beautiful morning. Sunshine, flowers blooming in planters, and a mother being arrested for helping her daughter destroy lives. The bail hearing was at 2 p.m. Judge Miranda Chen presiding. Small courtroom, packed with press. Brianna sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, looking scared and pregnant and sympathetic. The assistant DA stood up. Young guy named Kyle Morrison. Sharp suit, sharper mind. Your Honor,
The state opposes bail on the grounds that Miss Patterson is a flight risk, with access to multiple false identities and faces murder charges in both states. Brianna's lawyer, expensive Charleston attorney named Douglas Kemp, rose immediately. Your Honor, my client is 7 months pregnant. She has no passport, no criminal record as an adult. The allegations are entirely based on circumstantial evidence and the word of a jilted father who can't accept his son's choice. If you were the judge, what would you decide? The state would like to present new evidence, Morrison said. He played the recording from that morning. Sandra's voice confirming she'd helped Brianna target multiple men, confirming financial exchanges, confirming knowledge of the false identities. Then he played the hardware store footage. Then the autopsy reports. Finally, he called Ethan to the stand. Mr. Harding, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? My son sat in that witness box and told the truth. About Brianna's manipulation. About the escalating expenses. About the threats she'd made to me. She wore my mother's ring. And she was planning to kill me for inheritance money that would have come from my mother's life insurance. His voice broke. She was going to use my mom's death to cause mine. The gallery went silent. Even the press stopped typing. Judge Chen looked at Brianna with an expression I'd seen before when she sentenced a child predator to 30 years. Bail denied, Judge Chen said. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. Additional charges of conspiracy to commit murder will be filed in Virginia and Tennessee jurisdictions. Brianna screamed, "This is wrong! Vincent Harding is lying! He's obsessed with me! The baby is his!" Then you won't mind the paternity test, Judge Chen said coldly. We'll arrange one immediately. Court adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Ethan and I stood by my truck. Press swarming, cameras flashing, questions shouted. We ignored it all. "I'm sorry," he said, "for doubting you, for almost signing that affidavit. You were manipulated by a professional. Nothing to apologize for. But I should have trusted—" "No," I interrupted. "You should have questioned everything. That's what smart people do. You just needed better information." I put my hand on his shoulder. "And now you know what to look for next time." 3 weeks later, the paternity test results came back. The baby wasn't mine, obviously. But it also wasn't Trevor Schaefer's or any of the previous fiancés. It belonged to Douglas Kemp, her defense attorney, who'd been working with her since before she met Ethan, who'd helped plan the cons, who'd been a part of the operation from the beginning. The whole thing was bigger than we thought. Not just Brianna, not just Sandra, an entire network of people targeting wealthy men across 3 states. And we'd only caught the tip of it. The final chapter reveals how deep the conspiracy went, and the one person we never suspected. If you're not subscribed yet, you'll miss the moment everything explodes. How many people do you think were involved? Drop your guess in the comments.
Douglas Kemp was arrested in his office at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday. They found files on 43 potential targets, spreadsheets tracking net worth, detailed plans spanning 6 years, and photographs. Dozens of photographs of women who looked disturbingly like Brianna. Same age range, same build, same girl-next-door appeal. They weren't coincidences. They were employees. Garrett called me from FBI headquarters in Colombia. "Then, this thing is massive. We're talking about organized crime, multi-state operation, dozens of victims." "How many women besides Brianna?" "At least 7 that we can confirm, maybe more. They rotate them through different regions, change names, change targets. Kemp coordinates everything and takes a percentage. I felt sick. The 2 murders? Brianna was the only one who went that far. The others stuck to financial fraud. But now we're looking at every suspicious death involving the other women's targets over the last 6 years. Over the next month, the investigation uncovered 17 victims. Men from Charleston, Charlotte, Atlanta, Nashville, Richmond. A software engineer who'd lost his startup savings. A teacher who'd mortgaged his house to pay for a wedding that never happened. A widowed doctor who'd transferred $200,000 before the woman disappeared. And 2 corpses being exhumed in Tennessee and Virginia. The trial was set for October. Brianna faced 2 counts of first-degree murder, 14 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges. Sandra took a plea deal, 12 years, full cooperation. Kemp refused to cooperate, lawyered up immediately. The man who defended criminals for 2 decades suddenly needed his own defense attorney. Justice has a sense of humor sometimes. Through all of it, Ethan slowly came back to himself. We worked together every day, building houses, repairing foundations, doing work where you could see tangible results. "It's easier than fixing people," he said one afternoon, looking at a newly framed wall. "Yeah," I agreed. "But people can be rebuilt too. Just takes longer." The DA organized a meeting for all the victims. Conference room in downtown Charleston. 23 people showed up. The men who'd been targeted, some of their family members, even one victim's widow. They shared stories, compared experiences, realized how similar the patterns had been. The wedding venue changes, the emergency expenses, the manipulation using family guilt. One man, a pharmacist from Charlotte named Gregory, looked at Ethan. "How did you escape?" "I didn't. My father did. I was ready to marry her, ready to defend her even after the truth came out." He looked at me. "Sometimes you need someone who loves you enough to save you from yourself." 2 days before the trial, someone unexpectedly showed up at my house. Trevor Schaefer, Brianna's legal husband from Atlanta. Mid-40s, accountant, tired eyes. Carried himself like someone who'd been through war. "Mr. Harding?" he said when I opened the door. "I'm Trevor. Can we talk?" We sat on my back porch. Evening light fading, cicadas singing. I married her 4 years ago. Met her at a charity event. She was volunteering. Seemed perfect. "Let me guess," I said. "She moved fast. Started planning a life together immediately. Made you feel like you'd finally found someone who understood you?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, exactly like that." What I didn't know was that she was already running from something. From someone. He pulled out a photo. Showed me. Young woman, maybe 22. Long dark hair, bright smile. That's Brianna at 22. Before the cons, before the name changes, before everything. Her real name is Amy Chen, and she was a victim too. Trevor explained. Amy Chen had grown up in foster care in Georgia, aged out at 18, struggled to survive. Met a man named Richard Davenport, wealthy, charming, promised to take care of her. Richard was running the operation. The targeting, the cons, everything. Amy was his first recruit, his prototype. Jesus. He trained her, molded her, and when she tried to leave, Trevor's voice dropped. He killed her foster sister, made it look like suicide. Told Amy if she ever tried to escape, he'd do worse. So, Brianna, Amy, became this person because she was trapped? At first, Trevor confirmed. But then Richard died. Heart attack. 3 years ago. And Amy kept going. Because by then, he paused. By then, this was all she knew.
The cons, the manipulation, the money. She'd become what he made her. Does being a victim first excuse becoming a predator later? I'm not asking you to forgive her, and I'm not saying she shouldn't go to prison. Those men died. That's unforgivable. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to let the jury know the whole story, to understand that evil isn't always born. Sometimes it's created. He stood to leave. She loved me once, I think, before she forgot how. And maybe knowing that context, maybe it helps someone. October 23rd. Courthouse packed. Media circus outside. I sat in the front row, Ethan beside me, Garrett behind us. Brianna had given birth in jail, baby taken into state custody. She looked hollow, defeated. Not like the smiling woman who'd charmed my son at a beach cookout, like someone who'd used up all their masks and had nothing left underneath. The state presented everything. The recordings, the documents, the forensic evidence from the murders. Testimony from Sandra, from victims, from the detectives. The oleander poisoning, the fake identities, the pattern spanning years. It took 3 days just to present the evidence. Brianna's new attorney, a public defender doing her best, tried the only angle available. Ladies and gentlemen, my client was groomed from age 18 by a predator. She was coerced, threatened, and traumatized into becoming someone she never wanted to be. They presented Richard Davenport's history, his previous operations, the foster sister's death. Built a case that Amy Chen had been destroyed long before she became Brianna Patterson. Then they called Ethan. Mr. Harding, do you believe the defendant deserves compassion? Long silence. I believe, he said carefully, that terrible things happened to her. And I believe she made conscious choices to do terrible things to others. Both things can be true. She was a victim, she became a predator. And being the first doesn't excuse the second. He looked directly at Brianna. I would have died for you, and you would have let me die for money. That's not trauma. That's evil.
The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brianna didn't react, just stared at the table. Sandra sobbed in the gallery. The victims exhaled like they'd been holding their breath for years. Judge Chen sentenced Brianna to life without parole on the murder charges, consecutive sentences on the fraud counts. You had opportunities to stop, Judge Chen said, after Richard Davenport died, after the first engagement, after every choice you made to harm innocent people. You didn't stop. That's on you. Brianna was led away in chains. I watched her go and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just emptiness. Life went back to something resembling normal. Ethan met someone new, a structural engineer named Priya who worked on one of our commercial projects. Smart, funny, real. How do you know she's different? Ethan asked me one day. You don't, I said honestly, but you look for consistency, for people who are the same in public and private, for patterns that make sense. And you trust your gut, not perfectly, but better. One evening, Ethan came into my office. Dad, I want to propose to Priya. My heart jumped. You sure? Yeah. She knows everything, the whole story, and she didn't run. Can I use Mom's ring? I opened the safe, pulled out the white gold band, the 3 small diamonds, the ring that had been on Brianna's finger, that I'd had professionally cleaned and blessed by Catherine's favorite pastor. Your mother would want you to be happy, and this ring, it's about your future now, not the past. Ethan proposed at Magnolia Plantation, Not near the fountain where Brianna had threatened me, not near the oak tree where Catherine's ashes rested. At a completely different spot. Near the azaleas. Morning light. Small moment. Just the two of them. Priya said yes. I stood at Catherine's tree that evening. I kept my promise, I said. He's happy, he's safe, and he's smarter now. The breeze moved through the Spanish moss. Somewhere in the gardens I heard laughter. Tourists, families, people starting their own stories. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like Catherine could finally rest. 1 year later, I got a call from Child Services. Brianna's daughter, almost 18 months old, needed a placement. Trevor Schaefer had been caring for her, but his health was failing. Would you be willing to meet her? The caseworker asked. She has no other family. I thought about revenge, about justice, about innocent children paying for their parents' sins. Yes, I said. We'll meet her. Her name was Lily. Dark curls, bright eyes. She smiled at Ethan and reached for him immediately. She's not responsible for what her mother did, Ethan said, holding her carefully. No, I agreed. She's not. Priya squeezed my hand. We could foster her, she said softly, if you're okay with it. I looked at this little girl, born in a jail, innocent of everything except existing. And I thought about Catherine, about second chances, about breaking cycles. Yeah, I said. Let's bring her home. Revenge isn't always about destroying your enemy. Sometimes it's about refusing to let them destroy you. It's about protecting the people you love. And sometimes, on the best days, it's about choosing grace when the world expects hatred. Brianna Patterson destroyed lives for money, but she created one innocent life that deserved better. And making sure Lily got that chance, that felt like the ending Catherine would have written. If this story made you feel something, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Would you have taken in your enemy's child? Comment your honest answer below. No judgment. And if you made it this far, thank you. Stories like these matter because they remind us justice isn't simple, people are complicated, and choosing to be better than what hurt you, that's the real victory.